I want to say like my first crush was probably Robin Hood in that cartoon. I don't even remember the movie now. He was just so hot in that little hat. No, cut that out.
I guess I'm very lesbian in that way. I've always got to fight the urge to U-haul.
I would just like admire them from far. Felt like I'd gone through like a portal of my life into a new portal.
She teased me like crazy. You think she knew what she was doing to me?
He keeps coming back to visit me and all these different boyfriends throughout my life.
My first crush was Hercules, and then also in Hercules, second was Hades. I remember looking at him, he was a villain, which was like, ugh, I love bad guys, which is why I'm single, because I've got a toxic love language.
The actor in 10 Things I Hate About You, Julia, I don't know her last name. Sorry Julia, I forgot your last name. Steins? I loved all types of rom-coms, early 2000s rom-coms, late 90s rom-coms, and constantly had crushes on absolutely everyone who wore like low-rise jeans.
The first celebrity crush I can remember having was Alicia Silverstone, probably because Clueless would have been out and big at the time, and my sister was probably watching it a lot, and I was like watching it but pretending not to enjoy it because that's not a boy movie.
The Kim Possible was like one of my favorite shows, but it wasn't even Kim that I had a crush on, and I think this is where my love of toxic women started.
I'm really struggling to remember my first queer crush because like we weren't allowed to have crushes when I was growing up in a Chinese family. You're supposed to study and do well in exams.
My first crush was when I was 11 years old. And it was, a boy in my school. He was a year above me. And I had the most breathtaking crush on him for years. When I used to talk to him when I was 15, he looked completely bored. And that's when I knew he wasn't ever going to marry me.
Do you know where he is now?
Yeah, I stalk him on Facebook. I do. I stalk him on Facebook. He lives overseas. He's a lawyer. He's got kids. And he's still handsome. Even then, I had good taste.
My first crush was in year 3. He was this person I could never talk to. And he sat a few tables over, but I always wanted to sit next to him. I always wanted to play around him and do all those kind of things. And I scratched his name into my wooden pencil box, pencil case. And to the point that the teacher even thought it was his.
I love having a crush because it means it can be secret. So while you're coming to terms with your identity or you're questioning, you can crush on people for free. Nobody needs to know.
Love is something else for me. And that kind of, I grew up with that in my family a bit too, that yes, we feel love because you're meant to. But the way I've articulated love has been complex my whole life.
And if you don't mind me asking, where does that complexity come from?
Oh, that, let's call it inability to love, is because I don't, the inability to love for me is some kind of chemical thing in my body. I don't know what it is. And it's a self-protection because of, years of being protected. When I was growing up, my favourite song was Simon and Garfunkel, I Am a Rock. And I would sing that song to myself on repeat. I am a rock, I am an island, because a rock feels no pain and an island never cries. And there was a sense of always protecting yourself in that environment. So I think there's something that is inside me for that.
I think for many of us growing up, we have to hide our feelings that we have for other people.
I have my best friend and we, grew up in high school, and then a third friend joined our friend group and I grew a crush on her whilst I was dating my first boyfriend. But this was like a very important crush, and it
was very specific in my mind, and it taught me a lot.
First time I fell in love was with my partner Andrew, and this was really a crazy time in my life. We met 3 months after my HIV diagnosis, and that was about 5 months after I'd come out as bi. So that year, like, you could tell a lot was going on. And so to have someone come into your life who sees you for who you are, who doesn't judge you, and who just gives you unconditional love, I am so lucky, and I cherish that.
I guess the first time that I fell in love after coming out would be with my ex Jen, who made me feel like just this gorgeous, great woman. It was cool to finally be I'm in a queer relationship. Be this is my girlfriend. I am her girlfriend. It's good to hear those words said aloud about you. Searching for that label was a big thing for me, because to that point in my life I had only ever been someone's boyfriend and I'd never been someone's girlfriend, and I really wanted to be that because I wanted that on my record. And now I've been two people's girlfriend, so that's nice.
I'd broken up with my first boyfriend from high school because I just said, I was I know I'm queer, I need to go explore that. And then he was yes, okay. And we parted ways, and then in that small town that I grew up in where there's not a lot of queerness, I obviously did what everyone does, and I went on Tinder and I put girls only. And then I met my first girlfriend.
First boy kiss, okay. No, didn't work for me. I almost felt attacked, but this was not, it wasn't an attack, it was just a young man who was clumsy and didn't know what the hell he was doing, just like me, and he just took a shot, if you like. But, the eel in your mouth and the, oh gosh, and the spittle and oh no, smell. He didn't smell right either. Didn't smell right at all.
I was oh my God, this is how people feel all the time when they're in love? Is this what people who are secure in their sexuality feel? Because this is amazing and doesn't compare to anything I felt ever before. It's not like when I was dating men that I didn't love them or didn't like them. I still had really deep feelings for those people, but it's like a drop in the ocean compared to what I felt with my first girlfriend, for example.
It felt so right though. You obviously get really scared for those first queer experiences. It's so daunting to even think about, and you almost want to vomit thinking about it, leading up to it. Leading up to the first kiss, I was I could literally vomit right now. But then we kissed and I was wow, this is great. It's normal, it's beautiful.
The way I've described it, I can really only describe it because I was able to compare it with something else later, which was, when my first kiss with a woman. And that was a whole different universe, completely. It wasn't just a kiss with the parts of our body that touched, it was just my whole body sort of was on alight.
I had a boyfriend that I'd met on Grindr, where everybody meets their ex-boyfriends. I met this guy online, and we decided to go out on a date, and it was the first time I'd ever openly discussed going out on a date with someone publicly. And so the first intimate act we had was he held my hand when we first met, and I remember feeling so confronted by it, but also really this is nice.
And how did it feel experiencing that for the first time?
I felt selfish because I was doing something for myself, and I think majority of the stuff that you feel when you're coming up in a Pacific household around shame or guilt is you feel guilty that you, if I'm doing well, so say for example me being able to go out and have a touring life as an artist, coming from the area that I come from, there was a degree of sacrifice that happened for my family to be able to do it. And I remember agreeing to go out on this date and thinking, oh my God, my thinking about my mum going, my mum never went on dates with my dad, you know, or my sister can't go on a date, she's working so that I can have this opportunity. Like, my brain went to that place first before it thought about anything in terms of pleasure.
When I came out to my girlfriend, she broke up with me, like, straight away. Told her on Tuesday, she moved out by Friday. And that was, you know, that felt like a pretty big rejection of, like, who I was fundamentally as a person, so it hurt a lot and took a bit of therapy to get over. But, you know, and, like, she's not a bad person or anything like that, but, like, there were probably elements of it that, like, she could have handled better. There were probably elements of it that I could have handled better. My first queer heartbreak hit really hard because you feel these emotions so deeply, because it's like maybe the first time that I felt like somebody really saw me for who I am, and then when it all breaks apart, it can really feel like it's the end of the world, and you're like, will I ever find someone like this again, or my other relationships going to be as impactful and as deep and as beautiful? And it was scary going through that for the first time.
This was a person that I really felt that it was forever. I was, you know, very much in love with this person, but it was a time when we were experimenting with relationship types, if you like. And the idea of marriage and monogamy was seen as very unfriendly to women, and that these were patriarchal institutions that were set up to keep women under control. And in fact, in those times it was. You know, you couldn't have your own name. You belonged to somebody. You were Mrs. John Smith rather than yourself. You couldn't have a bank account in your own name. You couldn't own a house in your own name. You couldn't take out a loan in your own name. If you were a teacher, you couldn't teach once you got married. I mean, there's tremendous restrictions on women then, and, you know, obviously a long time prior to that. So a very important part of women's liberation was to break away from marriage and those kinds of one-on-one relationships. So we started experimenting with not monogamy. Well, you can just imagine how that went.
Very particular relationship that comes in mind. And I dated this person for about 3 years. And when they broke up with me, I think I used to describe it to my friends. Like, I remember describing it to my friends when it happened. And I was like, it feels like physical pain. Like, it does not feel normal. It doesn't feel like a normal level of sadness that I feel like I can get over. Like, I feel like my heart, like there's needles in my heart every time I breathe. Like, I miss her so much, and I wanted it to work out so badly. Everyone has that one queer first heartbreak, and they just lose themselves when it happens. But for me, I think what made it worse is that I was with her in a time where I didn't even know who I was. So when she broke up with me, I felt like I had lost everything.
My partner at the time was attracted to somebody else, and they slept with each other, and I could not handle it at all. My politics out the window, you know, personal is political. Yeah, that really broke my heart. Yeah, that was a big one. And I just went downhill, you know. I didn't look after myself. I fell into a deep depression, and I just lived on tea and cigarettes. I must have stunk, you know, like I was walking around, tea and cigarettes. I smoked packets of cigarettes a day. It was terrible. She and the person that she'd slept with went together to the Mardi Gras that night. I was going to go, but because they were going together, I didn't go. And they were arrested, went through that whole business with names in the paper and losing jobs and all that. Pretty romantic thing to happen, really.
I fell in love with this man when I was 23, and I loved him breathtakingly, you know, and I'm not sure that I even enjoyed sex with him. I think I was more, you know, that I loved him so much that I would have done anything for him. So, yes, and he broke my heart, and I've never really been one for relationships since that time. You cannot force someone to love you, no matter how hard you try. If he doesn't love you, he doesn't love you.
I think my first true experience of heartbreak when it comes to like queer relationships was my first relationship with my first boyfriend when he cheated on me. The way I would describe heartbreak for me initially, and I think in most cases, it's always been humiliating, you know, because I feel like when you open yourself up to someone, just in general, like friend, loved one, romantic love, you know, you're allowing them to sort of see or experience parts of yourself that you only let certain people experience. When someone abuses that trust or like doesn't respect a boundary, you know, it is really, I've always felt it really humiliating.
I don't usually cry, and this is one of the very rare events where I've cried. When I've cried in my life was when I left home to move to Australia. Yeah, leaving my family behind, my grandma and my mom and my siblings. It was really hard. I felt really guilty as well. And that's the Asian guilt, leaving my family behind, you know, especially when I was away, when my mom got sick. She was diagnosed with cancer, and during her chemotherapy, she unfortunately had a stroke, and people didn't think she was gonna make it. So I tried to be there for most of her doctor appointments, but living the furthest away, I wasn't able to be there with her. So I feel like heartbreak for me is something that I experience every time I have to say goodbye to my family. Every time they visit, every time I do a video call with them and I have to hang up, yeah, that I experience that every time.
Tell that person to not be afraid to love again, because I think that's probably the mistake that I have made, was that I was far too afraid to be hurt like that again. Now I'm just far too selfish. It's like, no, I'm not sharing my wardrobe. I'm not sharing half the bed. I'm not washing your dishes.
Don't worry, this is better for you. I think that's what I would say, because as it turns out, it would have been, it was better for me to not continue in that relationship for lots of reasons. When you're heartbroken and you're in a deep depression, there's nothing much you can say to someone that's going to bring them out of it. They just have to go through it. You just have to live it. That's probably important to say to anybody who has depression. It's rotten, it's terrible, but just hang in there. You know, you'll come out of it.
I would have said like, hey, it's gonna be a long time till you feel okay again. I know it's hard to believe, but this is actually a really good thing, and she wasn't meant for you, and you're gonna find someone who was meant for you, and they're gonna make you feel a whole different way.
To be honest, I wouldn't know how to advise my younger self about heartbreak, especially when it comes to family and loved ones, because it's something that I still experience every day. You know, being in Australia and being so far away from my parents and from my siblings. If I can just like see them more often, and I don't know how to end this part, but I don't have any advice for my younger self, because I probably still need advice right now.
Just because you felt this like deep connection with someone for the first time, and it's like you're missing puzzle pieces or something like crazy and romantic like that, that doesn't mean that it can never happen again.
I would say, don't waste your time. Don't waste your time on someone that doesn't respect you in the first place. You know, your feelings are valid, but there are more important fish to fry.
I'm so good at handling these things now, but I remember I'm like, oh, I'm 23 now. Like, you know, there was a time where things like took so long, and my favorite way to like understand that it will go away and like everything's temporary is that I see thoughts and feelings as like something that comes into my head and then it goes out and it's done. I try really hard. So I would, say young Saren, it's literally gonna go away eventually. So don't drown yourself in it.
If I was to go back and talk to my younger self about heartbreak, about love, I'd say if you can't find the language of love for you, you've got to make your own. You know, the absence of it is not going to be good enough. It will not serve you long term. And if you are in heartbreak, it is because you have loved and you have tried. And that's really important.
I looked horrible, but I didn't care. Like, I just remember feeling like Beyonce, even though I looked like Jay-Z.
I just wanted to look like a lumberjack so that lesbians would know that I was available and interested.
Even if I'd come out of the closet, my wardrobe was still in the closet.
I was going to nightclubs in fluoro leotards. You know, I thought I looked gorgeous, but looking back, it wasn't so gorgeous.
I remember in my early 20s, I bought a shirt. It had S on one arm, X on the other, and E on the chest. And just, you'd go like this, you'd dance along and then go like this, you know, this push. It was fantastic.
First time I started exploring my fashion and queer identity was when I was young, and I used to go through, not my mum's wardrobe, because my mum was like plain Jane, never wore heels, never wore makeup, because she's naturally beautiful, but my nana was a drag queen. She had like disco sequin fabric always, and she would always sew costumes or looks for her Sunday finest look at church, and she would always be dressed for the nines, hats, everything. And I remember rummaging through her closet one day because we lived with her, and wearing one of her jackets, which actually was this silhouette in disco sequin, and just living my life inside her closet.
The idea of the kind of the tight fitting kind of lycra shirt that was blue and purple, and my Doc Martens, which were, I think it was it 12 or 15 whole Doc Martens in purple, and these long purple shorts, and I loved myself sick in them. And this sense of going, I can be whatever I want. I can wear my sex shirt, or I can wear my lycra shirt. I bought a pair of hot pants. I didn't go that far. They were just for home.
I started expressing my queer identity through fashion as soon as I thought I was ready to come out. I bought this hat. It's just this navy New York hat, but the NY is in a rainbow. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so gay right now.
I wore a Fijian a costume for the first time, traditional dress, which is called a Sulu Chamba. And I put it on, and I looked in the mirror, and somehow I just felt that my nana would be very happy that I looked like a lady, and you know, I felt like a lady.
In lesbian culture, they talk about like, you know, flannels being a big thing. So my closet was like full of flannels of different shapes and sizes and colors. And I would like constantly wear them with different graphic t-shirts. And I had like 4 piercings in each ear and an industrial. Like, it was like, I'm queer, trust me, I'm queer.
I had this habit of going into my dad's wardrobe and just picking out random shirts. And my dad has I love my dad, but he has no sense of fashion, obviously. And I even at one point, he works at he does sugar factory stuff, and he wears like tradie things. And I literally put that on for a party because it just like felt, I was like, yeah, this is the top. And I think from a very young age, I was always told by mum, like, you just would always reach for the, like, quote-unquote boy clothing. I was always like, well, I'm dressing for comfort. I'm not dressing for anything else. And like, I'm not trying to impress a guy.
We just wore, I suppose, and I still do, just comfort is the most important thing. Pockets and comfort. It wasn't so much fashion, it was just practicality. And of course, the old overalls and the coveralls came in very, very handy as an expression.
I've always been a bit of a chameleon. I've gone through my hipster stages, I've gone through my himbo stages. I'm not sure what the next one will be, but it's always been pretty firmly anchored in my queerness, because, you know, I just want to try new things. And I think that's one of the beauties about being queer, is that you're sort of given this blank slate to express yourself, this blank slate to show yourself to the world however you want to be.
I wore this to essentially every gig that I did for about 2 years. It's just a way to be like, I am woman, hear me roar. And then I think we kind of came out the other side of like COVID lockdown, and I just sort of put her away. People still talk about it, and like if they're texting me about it, it'll be like capital T, capital S, the skirt. Because it was also probably not even just on stage. I probably just wore this every time I bloody went out. It was like a little signifier to be like, I'm allowed in this bathroom, or something like that. But she's a good girl. She served me well. We'll get her in a frame with like a little commemorative plaque at some point.
First time I got into drag, and this is like, so because I'm so like goal orientated, the only way that I would do it is if I was performing. Never did makeup before like that, never put a wig down, never wore a costume. And I remember it took us 3 hours to get dressed. And I remember for the first time in my entire life, after getting into drag, leaving the house, I felt scared. I think for the first time I felt like people were gonna see me, yeah, because it literally felt like I was introducing myself to myself. And it just took me back. It took me back to all of the insults that my father sort of would say to me, all my male cousins, or, you know, back to high school when people, you know, would call me Queen Kong. Like I was just sitting there going, oh my God, do I really want to do this? That one singular performance in that horrible divey bar to 3 people was more fulfilling for me personally than any show that I'd done in my whole career.
I'm a musician, and when I perform on stage, I become the Gaijin Empress. I wear like a white-based Chinese operatic makeup with elements of modern drag in it. And I feel like that's so important for me because I use my music and art as a way to, you know, have important conversations and inspire people, hopefully, about queerness and to talk about culture. And for me, it's so important because I also wanted to show that drag has existed in so many cultures in the world. It's not just, you know, because it's popular now, it was not created by RuPaul. It's been around for so long. I was always told that, you know, you should be more like butte and like muscular and more mask. And so dressing up and becoming the Gaijin Empress had a huge impact on me because like I was able to, you know, express myself in ways that I was told not to growing up. And I became a genderless version of myself. I think I also found confidence being able to tap into like a different personality and like find like a fire within me when I perform as the Gaijin Empress, unapologetically queer and Asian.
Badges were quite a thing, yes. I used to wear the double-headed axe, how come I forget the name of those things? The labris.
I had so many pins. Feminist, queer, my pronouns, just a rainbow one that said pride in rainbow like 5 times, and then like a black liberation fist, a rainbow flag one, just all over everything.
Oh, golly. There were so many. There were so many terrible moments.
I do not remember any of that. I've removed it from my mind.
Looking back, I've definitely had some very questionable fashion choices. Like I know I currently have blue hair. I've had, I've been blonde. I had ash blonde hair. I had turquoise hair. I think at one point of my life, I had a red mohawk, and I looked like a troll doll.
I would get the box dye from Coles and sit at home and bleach my hair. And because I've got like dark hair, it would always be that orange, really gross yellow blonde.
The zip-off pant with lots of pockets, so you can have, your snacks, your cards, your film camera, all on your person at all times. I probably have a version of this outfit in my closet. I definitely have like a little hat. I wouldn't wear it backwards anymore, but still love bright colors, and these shorts are really coming back. I've actually seen people wear these pants I used to have that have the zip, where you can remove the pant leg and then you have a short. I'm telling you right now, they're coming back.
I definitely would have been seen out much sort of past their time in a pair of Jeffrey Campbell Leiters, which I do still have because I reckon they might come back, and I'm going to hang on to them for that.
Look, the one-piece swimsuit and high heels at a pool party was pretty questionable. It was really great for my development. And to be able to, dress ridiculously, throw on a friend's wig, throw on some Zinker's lipstick and a one-piece swimsuit and just run around like you've got not a care in the world, and be accepted for who you are.
Do we ever feel that comfortable? I mean, really? Even when I was a size 10 with a size 27-inch waist, I was not happy. I thought I was, obese. But contentment, as soon as I transitioned, the day I took my first hormone, I was totally content. I was so happy to be Catherine, and I continue to be. I'm continually in a state of joy. I like to call it gender euphoria. I have gender euphoria.
I don't think I've ever felt comfortable in my body in a gay nightclub, say, But what I've always felt like I could do is dance. So it's got nothing to do with my body, I think, but got to do with a sense of releasing it and it not being part of the issue.
Feeling comfortable in my skin and my body as a queer person is something I'm constantly working on. I don't think it's like set for me yet because I still feel gender dysphoria sometimes when I'm wearing something and it doesn't look the way I imagine in my head.
It's a shame to say that to this day, I haven't felt 100% comfortable or confident with the way I present myself, but I feel like I'm getting there.
I think the first time I felt comfortable in my sort of queerness and sort of entire sort of being has only been really recently, to be completely honest with you.
When I think about it, it really wasn't until recently. It really wasn't until I think I started really coming into myself and becoming more self-confident when I had enough time with myself to realize that I liked myself and that all the things that I had tried to change over the years, there were some things that I was so happy that were changing and I was growing in, but there were things that I had changed that I wanted to take back almost.
I can't speak for everyone in the queer community, but I think gay men, a lot of us do struggle with body image issues. We're so obsessed with youth and age and the way we look. So I feel like it's quite common to feel that way. But having said that, I think things are shifting. I'm in a community that is very diverse now in terms of people's body types and appearances. Some of my closest friends are so body positive, and I feel like when I first came out and would go to a lot of gay men only spaces, there was a lot of body shaming, fat shaming, skinny shaming, body hair shaming, or whatever. You're never there's so many types, right? But I feel like we're getting there in our society, in our community, where like you can be whatever type you are and just have to feel good about yourself. I think it's common to sometimes wake up and, you know, have moments of self-doubt and like, oh, why do I look like this? And then other days you wake up and you say, look in the mirror like, yes, this is how I look and I love it.
For me, it's especially my chest. I used to, before I came out as non-binary, I was just mulling over it and I was like, I feel like I'm non-binary, but my boobs are so big. It makes no sense, right? Like feeling like this one part of your body that's seen by everyone in the world as a marker of being a woman. And that was sort of standing in the way of me saying that I'm non-binary. And it's still something I'm sort of dealing with now, but it's become more and more comfortable as I realize that the identity of being non-binary isn't linked to looking androgynous. I think it's often portrayed that way, that a non-binary character, like, which is also still kind of rare and only starting to be more popular now, but you'll often see the non-binary characters sort of leaning towards being androgynous or kind of just looking genderless. And I actually think genderless fashion I think is really cool. Removing like male or female from clothing items is something that I do. But also in terms of language, having genderless is kind of like less, you know, where I'm like, no, I'm genderful. I'm full of it. I'm embracing like all parts of myself and my body. And the fact that my chest isn't flat doesn't take away from my non-binariness, because it shouldn't ever impact it in the first place.
I think drag has had a heavy hand in helping me to unpack things that I experienced growing up that I didn't necessarily understand. You know, I think the thing about drag that I love so much is there is a degree of escapism that is so important. Every time that I was queen, I could sort of feel the possibilities of what I am, who I am. And every time I'd go back to being Tom, I think little by little, I was building a greater understanding of what and who I am and what I represent.
I think I was very like always back and forth for a long time, like growing up until like the past year. I was always like stepping into like different like bodies, but now I like know what I like.
Like I've been out for like probably like 5.5 years. I still think I'm figuring it out, you know, because like fashion's fun. It's fun to play around with.
I'd say to myself, zinc is not lipstick. I'd just say keep going for it and try more. Try more things.
Advice I'd love to give my younger self when I was starting to experiment with fashion would be to look beyond the binary sooner, because I definitely thought I had to like fit into certain boxes or present a certain way. And if I'd taken that pressure away from myself, I think I would have started to feel more confident and comfortable in my body earlier.
Wear it all. Just go. All that money you're saving because you want to buy a new computer, just buy a new shirt. Just buy a new shirt. Go for it.
I think the advice I would give to my younger self when exploring fashion is do not get microdermal piercings.
It's not illegal to wear more than one different type of shoe. Please stop wearing combat boots, especially when they're like worn through. Buy some new shoes. Camo is okay. Not everything you have to wear has to be camo.
You can look for ideas through other queer people, and that can help you, guide you, and still won't take away from your individuality and your own growth. When I was younger, I had this like big perception. It's like, oh, I don't want to copy people. I don't want to, I want to do it myself. But it's actually like, oh no, they can help guide you find what you like.
Talk to your fashionable female friends. like you don't have an eye for this, so go and talk to them.
Ooh, if I could go back to that child in his nana's wardrobe, what I would say to him is don't worry about how people are going to view you. know that the ones that are for you are the ones that will always be for you, you know. And I think that's the main thing. Don't be ashamed. You're amazing.
I think I saw this like picture that described diversity, like kind of in a good way, where it was a carton full of eggs, and all of the eggs were white and one was brown. And like, that's not really diversity. Like, diversity is like if it's a small egg and a large egg, and like one that's like speckled.
Well, the problem was back in the old days, right? Like the gay characters and the trans characters, they were like murderers and serial killers and rapists and perverts. There was never actually any positive LGBT people.
Killing of Sister George. I saw that first in a movie. That was pretty heavy stuff, because this early lesbian stuff was not good, you know. People didn't come out alive often.
Trans people were always kind of represented as like a punchline or like a, you know, unsavory character. And like, you know, if you're feeling like you might be that, that's not good. To have drilled into your head growing up that like you're essentially a freak.
The first kind of like movie that I watched, and it's definitely not queer themed, but I take it as kind of queer. My nana, for I think it was my 5th birthday, bought me and my sister a cassette of Cinderella. But the thing that I was obsessed with that I think is queer was the fairy godmother. She was my favorite thing ever. The idea of someone coming in, saving you and turning you into like a princess was just, there was something transformative about it that like always stuck with me through my years and even into being a drag queen.
I remember watching The L Word as one of my first like queer shows that I really got into. Yeah, I feel like something that actually kind of stopped me from watching it fully or enjoying it fully was that it was a bit like white and middle class. And I mean, that's what Generation Q has kind of like attempted to fix and remedy. I thought it was like a little bit too much drama. I was like, wow, these people go through so much drama. If I watch this for too long, I'm going to incorporate this level of like betrayal, cheating, murder into my life, and I wasn't ready for that. So I've never finished The L Word. I've watched some of the new L Word, which I think is like a bit more chill.
I still don't like that in movie and film and TV world that 9 times out of 10 when they're showing a queer couple or a queer person, it's always like the stereotypes, like, you know, crazy color hair, crazy haircut, piercings, tattoos, or like they're really like sexualized.
I can't think of a specific example of when I would have first seen bi representation, because I probably put it in the back of my mind because it's never been terribly good. But that's until we've seen Heartstopper come out, Kit Connor's character, and it's just incredible to see a bi man coming out on screen, coming out to his mother, coming out to his friends. One of my favourite lines from the show, this is in season 2, he says, "I'm bi actually," about 20 times throughout the season, and it's quite funny. I say that so much in my life.
I can't remember the first gay character or whatever, but I remember watching Lady Hawk with Matthew Broderick in it and just going, I want you to be gay. I really want you to be gay.
Okay, first queer film that I watched. Oh, that's really hard. I'm trying to think of. I think the first one I actually watched was But I'm a Cheerleader. I thought it was like an authentic representation of the queer experience in the sense that like the main character is so like, I'm not gay, I'm a homosexual. What do you mean I'm a homosexual? And you know, it's a very campy, fun film. And I really enjoyed the way that it was like very tongue-in-cheek with like, you know, this is what it means to be gay.
I can't remember the first, and I don't actually know if I'm trying to think in my head, but a queer relationship that I saw in a movie kind of somewhat recently that like has had a bit of an impact on like, I watched it and I was like, wow, that was done really well, was in Buzz Lightyear, the recent one, where the like general that's a woman's partner is a woman as well, and they have a baby. And I liked how the whole storyline wasn't like, the storyline was about Buzz Lightyear, and they still, you know, made the side characters queer and like made it very normal and chill. They didn't like, you know, make these characters like have crazy hair and piercings, and like they didn't do that stereotype. They just like literally normalized it.
The Crying Game, I suppose. The Crying Game, even though it was authentic representation, it was still for shock value. But at least the trans person wasn't a serial killer or a murderer, I suppose, if I'm sort of trying to look on the bright side of everything.
Late at night, I don't know if anyone else remembers, they used to like screen Queer as Folk. Like, I can't remember what day of the night it was, but I would always sneak out of my room and go and watch it like with the volume on like 1 and be right up by the TV and just sort of like watch bits and pieces of it.
I remember we're going back quite a bit, I had one of those portable televisions. You know, it looks like a Game Boy and it has the antenna on it. And I remember, this sounds like a fake story, but it's true. Watching Queer as Folk on my little television in bed in the middle of the night, and that was my little step into seeing queer representation. But nothing I ever saw on TV or in the media represented who I was.
Yeah, I remember watching Queer as Folk, and I thought, wow, like, you know, yes, gay men on TV, like, yeah, awesome, like, representation. But at the same time, like, I don't remember that show being very diverse. I think the biggest issue when you don't see queer people being represented is you start to think that they don't exist, and you don't know much about what it's like being queer or being queer relationships without the representation.
I think the thing that I was like thrilled by was seeing men on men, or looking at men, lusting over men, or having conversations, or seeing intimacy with men on TV, which is so beyond. I never felt represented by it because I could never see myself in the mix because they were all white men.
I was on lots of different smaller YouTube channels because mainstream TV was really not giving. There weren't any stories that I loved or that I found like funny and relatable and wanted to binge that related directly to my experience. Not saying like all mainstream TV is bad, obviously there's awesome stuff, but it wasn't really like tapping into my identity as a queer person. There was this one YouTube series somebody made called The Wondrous Life of Caleb Gallo. It was really funny and kind of low budget, and the characters were really funny and relatable and more connecting to me than anything that was like on network television. It showed me that those are lives that I could lead, or people that I could meet, or situations I could find myself in.
Influence and power is very difficult to define, isn't it? Because, you know, what was considered influential and powerful 35 years ago would not be considered influential or powerful now. When you're discriminated against constantly, you know, I mean, a trans woman who has a job is considered influential and powerful, even if that job was, you know, a receptionist in a doctor's office. That was unbelievable in that time frame, you know, and she was considered to be the guru on what it was to pass and to have a job in society, because all of us didn't.
I can't remember the first person of influence, but I remember the conversations around Neil Blewett, you know, who was the health minister during the Hawke Keating period, somewhere there, and he was a mastermind behind the AIDS response in Australia. And I remember someone pointing out saying, well, he's gay, and going, How do you know that? Where does that come from? You know, and this was with hindsight kind of thing, and going, he's gay, and Dunstan, the ex-premier of South Australia, is gay. And I go, how do you know these things? They can't be, can they? They're not allowed to be. They're not allowed to be these things in public. They can't be in a place of power. They can't be making decisions. They're not allowed. And this sense of discord that was going on in my mind about actually gay men can be in positions of power and allowed to be was something really new to me.
Georgina Bayer, who was the first openly trans gender member of parliament in New Zealand. In 1995, she was like appointed mayor of Charleston. I think it was Charleston in New Zealand. She was way beyond her time, and so the first openly trans member of parliament in any, like, across the world. There's like footage of her walking down through like a rally with Christian people, looking at everyone in the face and just like staring them down for being so bigoted and hateful towards queer people and trans people.
And was Georgina openly trans?
Yeah, so she was openly trans, spoke about her journey when she was appointed mayor. Like, she spoke about her journey to being trans, coming through prostitution, and like her whole journey of like creating a life for herself, as well as, you know, once she did establish what she was about, you know, making sure she paid it forward and made efforts to look out for sex workers as well as queer people in New Zealand, and using her platform to advocate, you know, and really acknowledge the trans community specifically in New Zealand. She was well respected, you know, for the most part, was respected because of her approach, because she was honest. She didn't lie about anything, and anything that anyone could exploit, like nowadays with cancel culture, anything that she could have been cancelled for, she led in with the conversation and made it apparent, and sort of used it, you know, to speak to the people that she represents, which was, you know, the marginalized people within the minority groups. Yeah, so what an amazing example.
I worked in a call center, and my senior manager was a gay Pacifica man. And he was amazing. He was like such a big shot, and everybody listened to him, and it was so cool seeing this guy like just run the floor basically.
And how important was it seeing this person in a position of power?
You know, I was used to seeing other queer people of colour maybe in like positions like me, maybe in slightly elevated roles, but never like senior management, and never like, you know, higher than like maybe a team leader. So it was really important to me to see that like there is a future for us, like we can go further than you know, the average, we can go further than we think we can. Because I think sometimes you think because of your sexuality, because of your gender, because of your cultural background, it might like hold you back from being able to achieve those things. But I really think that there should be spaces up there for us.
I can't think of one single person, one single role model.
What about someone who you saw as influential, or someone who was a leader? We had
collectives in those days, you know, no leaders. No leaders. No, there would have been perhaps some writers, poets who would step up in rallies, and so that you could associate them with some kind of leadership role, but. The idea of leaders was terribly patriarchal and very women's liberation at that time.
I actually really struggle to think about queer people in positions of power and influence because of the lack of queer representation in politics and arts growing up in Malaysia. I actually aspire to be one. I aspire to be someone who is in position of power and influence. I'm proactively trying to include community, proactively trying to create opportunities for new and emerging queer Asian artists to perform, to share their stories and amplify their voices.
I have many hopes and dreams for the future. Most of all, I would like to see trans children to be very normal within a family unit. I would like to see a few government ministers being trans. That'd be nice. I'd like to see some trans CEOs. I would like to see churches accept transgender children. I would really like to see trans people be like normalized.
It'd be really cool to have, like a prime minister who's like openly out, or, someone you always see in like a public role, like a chief health officer or an astronaut.
Australia's first trans lesbian given her own TV series. I've got ideas. Production companies, come talk to me.
My friend Mark Mariano said this in a panel once, and I really liked it. He said, I want to see a world where queer people and queer people of colour can be painfully average, and it's okay. We can make terrible rom-coms, we can make like terrible poetry, we can write shitty articles and make dumb reality TV, and no one bats an eyelid. So I want to get to the point where we've created so many things that it's okay to just make something shit.
I think sport's the last bastion, where actually the most macho of sports. I want to see a gay boxer. I want to see a gay football player that isn't Ian Roberts. I want to see someone who is there and is playing right now who says it's safe for me to be gay in public. And this country, the macho thing, needs to let go so it can actually free all men from that incredible limitation, I think.
I'm a huge AFL fan. I would love there to be like an out AFL player. Like, I feel like that's really missing, and like that's not even, my brand of queer, but I think that'd be so encouraging for so many people.
I would like to see it as normalised to the point where there's not a point made of it. It's like me being left-handed. Left-handed is probably about as common as being homosexual.
Oh, well, you know what my answer's going to be. More by men. More by women, by non-binary people, by trans people, being represented in all the different ways that they are, that show that there's not one way to be trans or non-binary or bi. There are so many different ways, and exploring the different relationships that we have, so not just monogamy but also polyamory, to be able to see just the examples that we can take on board and understand, there are different ways to doing things to how we've been told.
I don't like all this splitting up over small things. Like, I don't split off from humanity because I'm left-handed or because I've got two eyes a different colour. We're just all a part of the same species, and we should all be able to have positions of power, regardless of our sexuality or colour or left-handedness.
The first queer Prime Minister is 2 elections away. Please, I'm speaking it into existence.